Asia Pacific Report on Sabahul Muslim.
21 minutes past the hour of 6, the Asia Pacific Report. Asia is feeling the impacts of climate change more than anywhere else, from deadly floods and powerful storms to record breaking heat waves. Millions of people are being affected. Melting glaciers and rising seas are adding to those challenges. So, today we'll talk about what these changes mean for everyday lives and how communities are coping. To take us through the discussion, we joined live from Bangkok by Ian Salvana, a program associate with the Business and Human Rights Program at Forum Asia, a regional network of 86 organizations across 23 Asian countries. Ian focuses on corporate accountability, inclusive development, and environmental justice in the region. Ian Salvana, good morning. Welcome to Radio Islam International. Thank you so much for your time.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, across Asia, record heat waves, floods, and pollution is becoming everyday realities. What do these overlapping crises reveal about how prepared the region really is to protect its people?
Thank you for that question. We know climate change is not just an environmental or humanitarian crisis. We believe at its core, it is a human-made crisis. It's the byproduct of how our economies are built, how our resources are extracted, and of course, how we value profit over people and the environment. And of course, the consequences of climate change, it signals a deeper systems failure. At Forum Asia, we see climate change as a human rights issue, and civil society groups and environmental human rights defenders across the region, we try to sound the alarm on the impacts of climate change. And those who do this, they're often silenced, harassed, or criminalized. And civic space, to discuss solutions is shrinking, just as when it is needed to be expanding at this point. And adding to this, I'd like to note as well that Asia is the world's most disaster-prone region in the world, and as a result of this, people's most basic rights are also under threat, including, of course, their right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, to an adequate standard of living, to housing, and to participate in decisions in their future. And we see this as something that's testing the ability of Asian governments to protect the most vulnerable, especially communities already facing poverty, displacement, discrimination, exclusion, etc., etc. And these overlapping crises tell us something about the region's, readiness. Real readiness isn't just about disaster response. At its core, it's about justice and responsibility. It depends on the willingness of those in power, including governments, corporations, and other decision makers, to prioritize environmental rights and climate justice principles over profit in politics. Now, it also means holding companies or corporations and authorities accountable for the impacts of their actions. It also means protecting the people who defend land, water, and rights, and not punishing them. And of course, it also means ensuring that those most affected, including women, indigenous peoples, that they have a genuine seat at the table when decisions that impact climate change are made.
Now, Ian, unfortunately, the vulnerable communities are often the ones that are made to suffer the most from climate change. And then at the same time, they're the very same ones that have the least say when it comes to policy decisions. So, how can governments make sure that climate action is truly inclusive and centered on people's needs?
Yes. So across Asia, the people who are least responsible for climate change are often the ones paying the highest price, and we see this across different regions in the different countries in the region. We had the Pakistan flooding in 2022, and recently in the Philippines, we had a devastating series of typhoons, super typhoons. Yet they are the ones most excluded from the very decisions that are meant to protect them. And governments and businesses cannot respond effectively to climate change without centering the people most affected. So this is a huge problem. And this also means, moving forward, moving beyond top-down solutions or corporate greenwashing, and instead embedding human rights into every climate strategy and business decision. The conference of parties is happening currently in Belém in Brazil, and that's civil society hopes that it's going to spotlight community issues there, since it's already within the Amazon, particularly indigenous people's struggles, and of course leadership towards climate and environmental justice. We see just yesterday, IP groups and other protesters stormed the venue, and they've demanded for their rights as well. They're against mining, the drilling of their lands. Um, uh, they want to take back their rights from perpetrators. Um, and this is just a small picture in in a bigger, yeah, this is one small thing in a bigger picture. When we talk about climate commitments, which is very, very bleak. Just recently, Dialogue Earth just reported the U.S. withdrawing from the Paris Agreement commitments, making its NDCs invalid, and then China, also accounting for a third of the global emissions, they've announced unambitious targets. So this is very worrisome, knowing their global impact. And we've not in the recent COPs as well, we've seen petro states and states with restrictive civic spaces host them: Azerbaijan, Egypt, the UAE. And there are disproportionate presence there have been disproportionate presence of fossil fuel lobbyists across these COPs, and even more. For example, the Guardian just reported more than 5,000 fossil fuel lobbyists who were given access to the UN climate summits for the past 4 years. And these are oil, gas, and coal firms that have unprecedented access to COP 26 to 29, which have been blocking urgent climate action. And one thing that's underscoring this is corporate capture. So corporate capture continues to undermine genuine solutions, and it continues to sideline the very communities bearing the costs of inaction. Um, yeah. So uh, really, we need to ensure that communities have a seat at the table when policies and corporate plans are designed, implemented, and monitored. We also need to make climate finance and adaptation programs transparent and accountable so that resources actually reach the most vulnerable. We think protecting environmental and human rights defenders is paramount so that they can speak out without fear of harassment or criminalization, and that these climate responses are actually people-centered and inclusive. When they include communities, in decision-making tables, in terms of uh, including them in genuine consultations, respecting their free, prior, informed consent, their right to say no, their right to equal benefit sharing, truthful SIAs, EIAs, social environmental impact assessments, um, and of course, these companies, states, um, uh, financial institutions, for example, they should, when they do business activities, respect international human rights standards, for example, the UNGPs as well. So so that the government and businesses can also ensure that the climate responses are people centered and inclusive. But this will only happen when they are willing to share power and responsibility with the people who live with its consequences every day.
Now, final question, Ian. As Asian countries chase economic growth, how do we find the right balance, ensuring that development then goes hand in hand with protecting people's health, their livelihoods, and the environment at large? Ian? Um, Ian, are you still there with us? Okay, unfortunately, we seem to have